Hello, everyone. I'm here to talk to you about the presidency. And I want to, first of all, look at some of the different roles of the president. Okay. Um, and what we can see, hopefully, is that these different roles help to build the president into a powerful figure that we see today. Would argue, and I think a lot of people would agree with me on this, that the presidency is really the focus of the political system. More people vote in presidential elections than other elections. Um, People talk about the president passing laws, even though the president can't pass laws. People focus on the president fixing problems, although a president who could just fix problems, as people sometimes talk about it, wouldn't be really a president so much as a dictator. The president can't rule. The president can't make laws. The president can't do all these things by himself. But with such a president-focused system, we've kind of come to talk that way. It's pretty easy to do that. So why is that? I'll make an argument to you here with a couple of the different roles, a few of the different roles. Traditionally, based in the Constitution, the president has three basic roles. Okay, and these are this is the term, the key concept for the week. But the president as chief of state, chief executive, and commander in chief of the United States military. Those are all roles explicitly in the Constitution. Okay, the chief of state means that the president is kind of the one figure who represents the nation abroad and at home. Of course, there's nothing in the Constitution that explicitly says this is the chief of state that represents everybody. But the president does have the executive power. He controls the executive branch. The president appoints ambassadors and negotiates with foreign heads of state. Okay, and when you think about the head of state or chief of state, that is a really powerful role. In Britain, for example, that role is played by the Queen or the King when there's a king. Some other some other countries, some other countries separate that out from the political and will have a president and a prime minister, or some kind of arrangement like that. So, say in Israel, there's a president who is a more ceremonial figure, asks the prime minister or asks the parliament there to form a government. But then there's the prime minister who is much more involved in the day-to-day politics and of the parliament, or the Knesset, as they call it. Well, in the United States, the president is both chief of state and chief executive. So the chief ceremonial figure of the government of the United States and the chief political executive. Okay. Again, a lot of countries will divide this. In Britain, I've already mentioned that the king or queen is the chief of state, but the head of government or the chief executive is the prime minister. Okay. And so the fact that you have the chief of state representing the nation and the chief executive controlling the machinery of government, the executive branch of government, excuse me, this is a big part of why the presidency is so powerful, because the presidency combines those two in one person. Okay. And so the chief executive heads the bureaucracy. There's a big bureaucracy now. There wasn't one always. Can issue executive orders proclaiming neutrality for Washington in 1793, the internment of Japanese American citizens on the West Coast in the 1940s, and Ronald Reagan started the policy of reversing what's called, or imposing the Mexico City policy. When he came into office, he said, "Listen, we're not going to have any U.S. money going to fund abortions in foreign countries." When Democrats get into office, they impose their reversal of that. And then when a Republican gets into office, he again issues the Mexico City policy. So the executive powers are powerful. as well. And then we have the commander-in-chief of the military. The president is specifically the commander-in-chief, not of the country, really, but of the military forces, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard. Okay? And so that's also a powerful position. All those are vested in the presidency. Okay? You should be able to distinguish between those. So chief of state representing the nation at home and abroad, the chief executive putting laws into practice, signing the laws to put them into force, vetoing them if he objects. That can be overridden by 2/3 of both houses of Congress. Okay, issuing executive orders, heading the the different cabinet departments. Okay, now we have, and then commander-in-chief, which is commander of the military. We also have pretty early on the president emerging as a party leader. Okay, it seems that according to Mark Landy and Sidney Milkus, this really emerges first with Thomas Jefferson. Okay, and Jefferson is recognizes some of the power of being a party leader. But now, when there's a president, there's always a president, right? The president is the head of the party of which he is a member. Okay, not in the technical sense, but in the sense of being the de facto head, the in fact head of the party. So you've noticed, perhaps if you follow politics, that the Republican Party has really adjusted itself to the Trump presidency. Republicans, most of them, defend him pretty staunchly. The Republican Party is, the professionals of the party are very interested in and going to work very hard to get him reelected, right? And so the president is the head of the party. President Obama put his stamp on the Democratic Party. This always happens, okay? And so those roles, the constitutional roles of chief of state, chief executive, commander-in-chief, and then the very early emergence of the president as the party leader are really important, again, in creating a powerful presidency. Increasingly, we have more roles in the 20th century. We have the idea of the president as the chief legislator. Okay. Now, of course, the president's not really a legislator, right? But usually, presidents will have priorities that they want to put into place. And when they get elected, they say, this is what I'm going to do. And then it's a little more difficult than just doing it because you have to work with Congress to do it. But the most famous one in your lifetime probably has been Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act. President Obama was elected, and he said, I'm going to fix the healthcare system. We got to make sure everybody gets insurance, and that laid the foundations for Obamacare. The Congress ended up writing a lot of it, and it got passed, after a lot of wrangling and everything. So that's what you often have, is the president is expected to have a program, and the president tells Congress, here's what I want to do, and I want you guys to pass it. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, right? So that's a big deal. The agenda is usually presented to Congress. And the president seems to have an enormous advantage of just being one person and not 535 members of Congress. The president has the media attention. The president has the visibility, the recognition to be able to make these kind of cases. And it's, a lot of times people don't even know who their own member of Congress is. I don't know exact statistics. That would be a good one to actually figure out or to look up. But the president is the one universally recognized, almost universally recognized figure. Just as a sort of funny illustration, my 4-year-old wanted to watch a video about the Cincinnati Zoo video during the shelter-in-place thing, stay at home. Well, every day at 2 o'clock, the Cincinnati Zoo issues a video or does a Facebook Live where they talk about an animal there. And so I was looking for that, fumbling around because I don't really know how to use that part of Facebook very well. And I clicked on the live, and then it showed President Trump about to take the podium after Mike Pence was, the vice president, was going away. And Sabrina says, "Oh, that's just presidents," right? So she knew that there was a president, right? She doesn't know President Trump's name, but she had an idea that was the president, right? So it was a little illustration of the recognition factor that presidents can have. Okay. Now, not only is the president, expected to have this legislative program, but also he can be thought of as the chief diplomat and a global leader. Sometimes presidents are talked about as the leader of the free world. And when some of President Trump's critics and opponents will call, say, Angela Merkel, the president or the chancellor of Germany, the leader of the free world now, that's a direct, attack on President Trump, right? Basically saying he's given up that. The American president should be, in a sense, the leader of the free world. But the United States has the most powerful military in the world. It's still the world's wealthiest country, all those kind of things. And so American presidents have a lot to help them to be globally recognizable. Okay? And all these things together seem to really make the American president not only the most recognizable figure in the United States, the most powerful figure in the United States, but also very possibly the most powerful person in the world and one of the most recognized people in the world. Okay, so this is a big deal. Now, another aspect of all this, you can think of it all as a package, again, that Mark Landy and Sidney Milkus talk about, is the personalized presidency. Okay, and you can see this developing from Theodore Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, Franklin Roosevelt, Ronald Reagan is another example, President Trump in his own way, right? President Obama before him, President Clinton before him. But the idea of the president as the only person who can really reach everybody. Okay, and presidents who have been savvy have used the available media to present themselves to the public. Woodrow Wilson started addressing Congress again after 100 years of presidents not addressing Congress. Wilson wanted to address the American people and wanted to use his addresses to Congress to do that. Franklin Roosevelt famously used radio. Presidents after him once television was available, have used television very well. President Reagan was very good at that. President Trump, obviously with Twitter, right? So there's this kind of personal connection that presidents can have to voters, at least the ones that support them, and also in a way can spawn that opposite personal connection where people who don't like them really don't like them, okay? Or at least some of them really don't like them, okay? And so there's this kind of emotional reaction to presidents too. Now, why do these changes take place? Partly it's based on some presidents have a more magnetic personality. Some are able to see opportunities to connect themselves to the American public more. We also have crises like the Great Depression, World War I and World War II, Vietnam, and things going, or the Cold War, including Vietnam, 9/11, okay, the financial crash. So when there are economic or national security crises, presidents are often able to enhance their own power by talking about how to address them, how to solve them. We also have a more powerful federal government. So when the federal government has gotten more powerful over time, that also elevates the president. Okay, and we also have a more national political culture that's more focused on those national issues. Okay, so these are some important changes that have taken place. Now, the president has a staff that's going to help him do his job, right? We have the cabinet that's they're heads of the departments. The president picks them and has to have them approved by Congress. But perhaps even more importantly, you have the vice presidency, you have the executive office of the president, you have the whole White House staff. There's an enormous number of people who work in these White House offices and the executive offices of the president to advise the president on how to manage the big old bureaucracy underneath him and how to communicate to the public what actions he can take, what boundaries sometimes the president can push, all these kinds of things. Okay? And so that's a big part of how the president is able to do the enormous job. Okay? And it's really, in some ways, still a two-edged sword, because presidents have all this political capital available. They have all this ability to communicate their message. They are able to reach the public much better than Congress can. And they're able to often portray themselves as kind of savior figures, right? As national leaders who can get something done. But at the same time, they also get held responsible when things go wrong. Okay? And that is something very, very difficult as well. And the public can turn on presidents. Okay? It's, if you're going to get the credit when things go well, you're also going to get the blame when things go badly, it seems. And so, that's part of the reason I think President Trump is concerned about the stock market and the economy with coronavirus. Not only because that is actually an important question about the economy, right? You don't want everybody losing their job, for example, but he also knows that he's taking a lot of credit for the economic expansion, and he may well take the blame for a recession, for things going badly. Even though I think it's fair to say there's a lot of other factors besides him at work in both of those. It seems to me. So, presidents, kind of like baseball managers or coaches in other sports, they probably get too much credit when things go well, and they get too much blame when things go badly. But that's part of that double-edged sword of being the focus of attention. Okay. Now, this is you're getting a chance to see a lot of these dynamics play out with the news coverage and also just the general conversations about the coronavirus. A lot of it ends up reflecting back on President Trump, rightly or wrongly. Okay, and he's the one who's oftentimes in the spotlight. And so we can talk about that a bit in the discussion forum. I'm going to post a link to the Executive Office of the President that's talked about in your readings. And I talked about it a bit, but the link that the Trump administration has out there for people to look at. I'm going to post a quote that I think really describes the modern presidency by Andrew Bacevich. And I'm also planning to post a story about the coronavirus, and I encourage you to share your own examples of news and everything that you're reading about the coronavirus and how it relates to the presidency. Okay? Thanks for your time, and I will talk with you later.